America's most feared death row inmate. The prisoner everyone wanted isolated, the prisoner everyone feared. Before we dive in, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, hit like, and drop a comment if you dare, because what you're about to hear isn't for the faint of heart. It was a cold January night in Florence, Colorado. The wind cut to the barren landscape like a knife, and the towering concrete walls of ADX Florence, the so-called Alcatraz of the Rockies, cast long shadows over the snow-streaked ground. Inside, the world's most dangerous men lived under 23-hour lockdowns, monitored by cameras and guards armed for war. But among them, one name stirred a fear that no prison protocol could contain: Jackson the Butcher Malone. Detective Laura Simmons had been on homicide investigations for over a decade, but nothing had prepared her for the call that night. A courier had found a note slipped beneath the door of a federal evidence locker, a note that simply read, "He's coming back. Look closer." No signature, no explanation. But the handwriting, it was chillingly familiar. Malone's crimes were notorious. In his early 20s, he had executed a string of robberies, kidnappings, and murders across multiple states, each more brazen than the last. He was known for taunting law enforcement, sending letters to families of victims, and escaping from halfway houses with unnerving ease. By the time he landed in ADX Florence, he wasn't just a criminal. He was a legend of fear. Yet tonight, Detective Simmons wasn't thinking about legends. She was thinking about the courier's message and the fact that Malone had been impossible to reach inside his cell. Guards reported he never spoke unless spoken to, and even then, his answers were clipped, almost mechanical. He was a ghost in flesh and bone, isolated in a fortress designed to break the unbreakable. The investigation began with the mundane security footage, guard logs, and the carefully curated schedules of every inmate. But almost immediately, anomalies appeared. One camera had gone offline for exactly 17 minutes at 3:14 a.m. A guard's log listed Malone as in cell during that time, yet he was seen later in a recorded confrontation with another inmate, an inmate who, according to official records, had been transferred weeks earlier. Simmons felt her stomach twist. Someone was lying, or worse, someone was being manipulated. She requested the files from the previous week: disciplinary reports, internal emails, maintenance schedules. Each paper only raised more questions. A maintenance worker had been caught near Malone's cell on multiple nights, though no one could explain why. And the worker's fingerprints were strangely absent from official logs, as if he had never been there at all. Meanwhile, the prison's atmosphere seemed to mirror the tension outside. Guards whispered in hallways, exchanging nervous glances whenever Malone's name came up. Even the warden, a stoic veteran who had managed the facility for nearly 20 years, avoided eye contact when discussing him. "He doesn't need to escape to control the prison," one guard muttered. "He just has to exist." Then the breakthrough, or the warning, came. A janitor reported a faint smell of burning plastic near one of the utility corridors. Surveillance footage showed nothing unusual, yet Simmons noticed a detail she hadn't before: a thin line of smoke rising just past a vent connected to Malone's wing. Smoke that appeared without a fire being reported. She ordered the wing to be sealed, every inch inspected. What the forensic team found in the vent left them speechless: a crumpled, charred note, partially destroyed by heat. Yet enough remained to make their blood run cold. "He is closer than you think. Trust no one." By now, the tension in the prison had become palpable. Guards reported strange noises, footsteps echoing in empty halls, doors opening and closing by themselves. But there was no evidence of tampering. Malone, confined in the tightest isolation cell in the country, seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Simmons sat in the security office, staring at the monitors, piecing together fragments that didn't fit. And then her phone buzzed with a cryptic text from an anonymous number. "Check the records from the transfer. You missed something." With a sinking feeling, she pulled up the transfer logs. And there it was: a name, a date, a transfer that never officially happened. Malone had been moved not once, but twice, under obscure circumstances, and the records were altered to cover it. Her heart raced as she realized a horrifying possibility. If Malone had found a way to manipulate the system from inside his cell, no one and no place was safe. The screen in front of her flickered, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw a shadow pass behind the guard monitoring the cameras. She leaned forward, but when she checked the feed, the hallway was empty, and in the corner of the monitor, just barely visible, Malone's eyes stared back at her. Simmons' hands trembled as the thought sank in. How could he be in the footage if he was supposed to be locked in his cell? Shadows in the fortress. Before we get into the next layer of this nightmare, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Because once you see what's happening inside ADX Florence, you'll understand why no one dares look away. Detective Laura Simmons couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Malone stare, cold, calculating, and impossibly close. That night, she went back over security footage, frame by frame. Something clicked. The shadow she had seen was an illusion. The hallway cameras had captured him, moving like he knew the blind spots better than any guard on duty. Simmons called in a digital forensics specialist. Every angle, every timestamp, every door sense was analyzed. The result was impossible. Malone's movements appeared in areas he could not physically reach. Every explanation, theories about hidden tunnels, secret access panels, collapsed under scrutiny. Whoever had altered the footage had intimate knowledge of the prison's operations, and there was only one person capable of it, Malone himself. Meanwhile, inside the prison, the atmosphere was deteriorating. Guards reported that Malone's behavior had shifted. Previously silent and contained, he now left cryptic messages etched into walls and ventilation ducts. One note read, "They think isolation will stop me. They're wrong." Another, more chilling, "The rats in this cage will squeal before the walls fall." Simmons knew she was running out of time. If Malone was communicating to the prison infrastructure, then there was a network of accomplices, or worse, someone inside the warden's office. She requested an immediate audit of staff, a review of all maintenance schedules, and background checks on everyone with access to Malone's wing. It didn't take long to uncover a lead. One guard, recently promoted, had no verifiable work history before joining the facility. Simmons' team dug deeper and found that he had been terminated from a private security firm for tampering with surveillance systems. Confronted, the guard claimed innocence, insisting he had been set up, but his nervous glances and fidgeting told a different story. At the same time, Malone's presence was becoming almost psychological warfare. Inmates whispered about objects disappearing from their cells, personal items, letters, even small amounts of cash. A few reported hearing their names called late at night, though the guards found no one. Every hint pointed back to Malone. Even without leaving his cell, he had become a force that haunted the entire prison. Then came the call that escalated everything. A maintenance worker in the lower basement of the facility had been found unconscious, surrounded by tangled wires and smoke-damaged servers. In his hand was another partially burned note. "Some secrets are buried too deep. Others right in front of you." The note led Simmons to the prison's internal network logs. Hidden within encrypted files were hundreds of altered records, camera feeds, door schedules, even staff check-ins. And buried deeper, a transfer request file that shouldn't exist. Malone had been officially moved to a different cell 2 nights prior. In reality, he had never left the isolation wing. Someone had faked the transfer, someone on the inside. Suspicion fell on everyone. The guards, the janitors, even the warden's administrative staff. But there was a pattern, a subtle signature of communication Malone had used during his early crimes. A folded paper left an event, a code in the placement of objects, a sequence of scratches. It was the same pattern. Malone had orchestrated this chaos himself. Then the unthinkable happened. The warden's office received an anonymous envelope. Inside, photographs of the family of a prison investigator assisting Simmons. Faces, addresses, and cryptic warnings. Stay close or they'll join him. Malone wasn't just controlling the prison. He was reaching outside its walls. Fear escalated into urgency. Simmons realized Malone's reach was far beyond what anyone imagined. Every call, every record, every interaction could be compromised. The walls of ADX Florence were no longer just stone and steel. They were part of Malone's playground. And then, in the middle of the night, Simmons received a call from a panicked guard. The isolation wing's cameras had gone dark simultaneously. When backup systems were activated, one monitor flickered, revealing a single, unmistakable image: Malone standing in the doorway of his cell. Only his cell had been locked, double-checked, and monitored. Simmons raced to the prison with a federal SWAT team in tow. When they arrived, every door was secure. The guards insisted Malone hadn't moved. Yet in the cell, scrawled on the wall was something dark and sticky, with the words, "Soon, you'll see me where no one can stop me." And behind the cell, hidden in a barely noticeable gap in the concrete, was a vent that shouldn't have existed, large enough for a person to crawl through. Her gut told her one thing: Malone had planned this. He had waited, and whatever he had orchestrated next, no one was ready. Simmons leaned in, flashlight shaking, heart pounding. She peered into the vent, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Something, or someone, was already inside. The monster unmasked. Detective Laura Simmons crouched at the entrance of the hidden vent, flashlight cutting through the darkness like a scalpel. Her team of federal officers flanked her, rifles ready, eyes scanning every shadow. Every step felt like stepping into a predator's lair. The air was thick, musty, and electric with tension. Malone had turned isolation into an armory of fear, a maze only he understood, and now Simmons was about to step directly into it. The vent was narrow, forcing her to move single file. She could hear her own breathing, the faint shuffling of the officers behind her, and something else, a rhythm, footsteps that didn't match their own. Malone, and then a low voice, calm, deliberate, and terrifying, echoed through the vent. "I've been waiting for you, detective." Simmons froze, heart hammering. The voice was unmistakable. Malone, but there was no sound of a person moving toward her, only the echo of the voice, bouncing off the concrete, a phantom that made her question every step she'd ever taken in law enforcement. The vent opened into a maintenance crawl space, a tangle of pipes and wiring, completely unmonitored. And there, in the dim glow of a single hanging bulb, she saw him. Malone's figure was hunched over a makeshift console of hacked computers, monitors displaying every corner of the prison, every camera, every record, all manipulated by his hand. "You've been chasing shadows," Malone said, turning slowly to face her. His eyes were icy, brilliant with intelligence, and utterly unrepentant. "And all the while, I've been right under their noses." Simmons raised her gun, but she knew this was more than a standoff. This was psychological warfare. Malone wasn't just dangerous. He was playing a game she hadn't realized she'd joined. How did you even do this?" "You're supposed to be in isolation," she asked, voice tight. Malone smiled, a thin, chilling line. "Isolation is a tool, detective. They think walls contain a man, but walls only contain fear if the man lets them. I didn't escape. I manipulated everything they think is reality." Then, a sound behind her made Simmons spin. The officers were gone, doors sealed by automated locks. Malone had anticipated the team's arrival. He didn't need to leave his cell. The prison itself was his weapon. Simmons' mind raced. She remembered the burned notes, the altered records, the warnings sent outside the prison walls. It was all connected. Malone had built a web, and they had walked right into it. "You see," Malone continued, "fear isn't about what I do. It's about what they think I could do. And fear is contagious." Suddenly, lights flickered, alarms blared, and a mechanical lock slammed shut behind Simmons. She was trapped in the crawl space with him. Malone moved closer, calm, methodical. Every instinct screamed danger, but there was no immediate attack, just a realization that he had already won. Then, the twist. Malone tapped a key on the hack console, and a hidden compartment opened. Inside were files, photographs, and documents proving something Simmons had never suspected. Malone hadn't acted alone in the past crimes he was imprisoned for. There were accomplices, high-ranking officials, even someone inside the FBI who had covered up critical evidence to protect him. "You think you've caught the monster," Malone said softly, "but I've been part of a network that extends beyond these walls. Capture me, and another rises. My name isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Simmons realized she had a choice. She could try to apprehend him physically, but with the prison systems compromised, escape routes blocked, and his knowledge of every security measure, she would be walking into certain death. Instead, she made a call to federal tech specialists outside the facility, who began remotely shutting down systems, cutting off a control one by one. Malone's eyes flicked to the monitors, realization dawning that his control was slipping. His face twisted into anger, but even in defeat, there was a calm, terrifying composure. The SWAT team burst through a secondary access point. Surrounding him, Malone's hands were raised, not in surrender, but as if to say, "You may cage me, but you can never understand me." They took him away, strapped into restraints, and for the first time in decades, Malone was physically powerless. Yet the haunting thought remained. His influence had seeped into the prison, into the minds of guard, investigators, and officials. The monster was contained, but his legacy of fear was not. Weeks later, after Malone was moved to a more secure section and federal investigations began, bodies were found, anonymous, carefully staged, with notes echoing Malone's signature. Investigators realized that while the man was behind bars, the network he had built was still at large. Detective Simmons sat in her office, reviewing the files, her hands trembling. She understood now. The real battle wasn't against a single man. It was against the idea of fear, manipulation, and control. And for Malone, that battle would never end. They thought the monster was behind bars. But 3 months later, another body was found, far from ADX, with the same unmistakable signature. Malone's reach had no borders. If you think the story shook you, remember, some monsters don't just live in cells. They live in systems, shadows, and minds waiting for the next move.